Hey guys, and welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. I know you guys out there were very interested to see some more monitor review coverage on this channel, and I'm delivering for you today with the AOC Agon AG251FZ, another monitor with a rubbish product name that makes it really hard to remember, but this is a quality monitor nonetheless. Now, if you guys watched my review of the Asus ROG PG258Q a couple of weeks ago, this is essentially a FreeSync equivalent of that monitor. So it's still a 24.5-inch TN panel with a resolution of 1920 by 1080, and it supports that extremely high 240 Hertz refresh rate with adaptive sync. So despite the fact there's a sloth on the screen at the moment, this monitor is no slouch at all. While many aspects of this monitor's specifications are very similar to the PG258Q, like its 1000:1 rated contrast ratio, 1 millisecond gray to gray response times, and its 170-160 viewing angles, this monitor is cheaper than the PG258Q by quite a considerable margin because of the difference between the G-Sync module that you find in Asus's offering and FreeSync in the AG251FZ. Boy, that product name. This model is $300 cheaper in Australia, so it comes in at 600 Aussie dollary dues right here. And for those of you in the United States, it's a little bit hard to get because it hasn't quite hit the United States just yet, but we should see it coming in at around 500 US dollars, so around $100 cheaper than the PG258Q. And for a monitor with very similar specifications, this could be quite a bargain for some of you guys out there. As always, let's start with the design, and to be honest, this is a much more attractive monitor than the PG258Q. As you'll see, the AG251FZ has a much more understated design. There's a lot of gamer elements in the PG258Q, but you won't find this here on the AOC offering, and I think that makes it look a lot better on your desk. I love the wide silver stand that you'll find here. It's made of metal, it's very sturdy, and although it's large, it does provide a number of maneuverability options that I think most of you will be after, including height adjustment, in my opinion the most important adjustment feature of any monitor. There's also your standard tilt and swivel adjustment, so you can turn this from portrait to landscape mode and vice versa. And it also supports your pivoting options from the base, so you can rotate this monitor without having to adjust the base itself. You simply plant the stand on once and adjust to your heart's galore. As the stand supports height adjustment, it still uses a pillar design that takes up a fair bit of space on the back, so it's not a particularly slim monitor. That said, the actual display section is a bit slimmer than the PG258Q, and that makes it look a little bit nicer. You'll find a large red strip along that back panel, which adds a little bit of highlight to the design, I guess you'd have to say, but again, no massive gamer style elements like on the PG258Q, and even though there's a large red back here, I think it looks quite good in general, and I appreciate the design that AOC has used here. As far as connectivity is concerned, there is a lot of it on the AG251FZ. You'll find DisplayPort, which is necessary for achieving 240 Hz and for FreeSync. There are also two HDMI ports, one of those supports MHL. You also get a DVI port and even a VGA port for those of you still using that legacy connector. There are two 3.5mm audio jack pass-throughs, so you connect your audio cables up to the back of the monitor and you can plug in your headphones and microphone to those convenient ports on the right hand side. Also on the right side, two USB 3.0 ports with a further two USB 3.0 ports on the rear of the monitor from that USB 3.0 hub. Again, quite a handy range of connectivity here. On the front of this monitor, you'll find 10mm wide bezels on the left and right hand side, so slightly larger than the PG258Q, but slim nonetheless. And the on-screen display controls are basically four buttons that you will find along the bottom edge in the right hand corner. It's pretty difficult to control the OSD through these sort of buttons, and I prefer the toggle design of the PG258Q, but you do get quite a range of features in the on-screen display, including a whole bunch of gamer modes, things like shadow brightness boosting. You've got some saturation controls, there's overdrive, there's even something that allows you to make a certain area of the screen bright. I'm not quite sure why you need that feature, but it's all included in the on-screen display here. You don't get some of those crosshair features like you find in the PG258Q, but I think there's still enough customizability available through the on-screen controls on the AG251FZ. And for those of you who are finding it too difficult to control the monitor through those buttons on the bottom panel, AOC has included this. It's a comically oversized dongle. Obviously the text is designed for elderly people. There's no other explanation for why this thing is so massive, but basically this brings out some of the controls from the monitor and puts it on this button, so it's a little bit easier to control and navigate through the on-screen display. Using this little dongle, it plugs in through a USB type B port, which you'll find here, that plugs into the back of the monitor, so you can simply plug it in, set up the monitor however you want using this little dongle, and then unplug it and throw it away, which is kind of a neat feature, to be honest, considering that those on-screen display controls can be a little bit difficult to use with those buttons on the bottom, and I kind of appreciate it, though I guess the dongle is a little bit too big for my liking. Obviously, the standout feature of the AG251FZ is its 240Hz maximum refresh rate. As I mentioned in my previous monitor review, I can definitely tell the difference between 60Hz and 144Hz. It makes a massive difference in the general usability of your PC and in the responsiveness of games. However, when you upgrade from 144Hz to 240Hz, there's diminishing returns for sure. I definitely can't tell as much of a difference between those two refresh rates. But for those of you who are into extremely responsive gaming, you love playing your esports titles or competitive shooters or whatever, you'll benefit from the reduced input latency and increased responsiveness of your gaming experience when playing at 240Hz. And that's obviously why AOC has decided to produce a 240Hz monitor. It's for those guys out there who are competitive gamers and love playing those sort of esports titles. I will say it's pretty interesting to see 240Hz support in a FreeSync monitor. Obviously on the Nvidia front, it's pretty easy to hit 240 FPS in some games using like a GTX 1080 or GTX 1080 Ti and a G-Sync monitor like the PG258Q, but on the FreeSync front, it's pretty hard to hit 240 frames per second using an RX 480 or a Fury X. You'll probably need to run RX 480 Crossfire to sort of hit those upper frame limits that you'll need for 240Hz, or you could simply wait for Vega that should be coming in the next couple of months. So not the best monitor to buy just at the moment, but I think AMD will have some solid graphics offerings in the next couple of months that will really make use of the 240Hz refresh rate that you'll find in this monitor. All right, let's jump into SpectraCal CalMan 5 and take a look at how the AG251FZ performs in our usual range of color performance tests. Obviously, this is a TN panel, so we're not expecting the best viewing angles or contrast ratios, and that's definitely the case with this monitor. A contrast ratio of just 868:1 is below what you'll find on IPS monitors, and the viewing angles on this panel are not too amazing, particularly in the vertical direction. You can achieve 411 nits of peak brightness when you set the brightness level to 100, but at its default level of 90, we achieve 336 nits of brightness, which is a bit too bright for most indoor viewing conditions, at least in my opinion, and what you should definitely calibrate your monitor to. As you'll see here, the default color temperature average is 6497K, which is very decent and close to the accurate value. However, the display is cooler at those mid-gray levels and warmer at pure white, and this is reflected in a grayscale Delta E2000 average value of 2.39 during our grayscale sweeps there, so not the most accurate display in terms of gray performance, and gamma performance as well, pretty disappointing at just a value of 2.0 by default. As we move on to our saturation sweeps, we find a Delta E2000 value of 2.14, decent but not outstanding. Let's remember, of course, that a Delta E value of under 1 is considered pretty much accurate, and anything up to a Delta E of 2 to 3 can be considered good but not fantastic. As we move on to our color checker custom test, the AG251FZ produced an average Delta E2000 value of 2.91. So again, not fantastic, but not terrible for a monitor out of the box. If you want to calibrate this monitor but you don't have a color calibration tool available to you, you can make some adjustments in the on-screen display. I recommend changing the contrast to 45, brightness to 49, leaving the gamma setting at gamma 1. The other two settings don't really impact the accuracy too much. Setting the color temperature to the user setting and setting red to 51, green to 49, and blue to 44. You just need to leave most of the other settings at their default level. However, I would recommend turning on overdrive and switching it from off to strong. I think that gives the best anti-ghosting performance. After performing these OSD adjustments, you will see pretty decent grayscale performance here. The Delta E2000 value has improved to 1.69. Gamma still remains pretty poor at 2.0, and the CCT average is decreased to 6679K. However, I do appreciate that increased accuracy in the grayscale sweeps. Looking at our saturation sweeps, and the average Delta E2000 value has improved to 2.01, so pretty decent. It's certainly getting there. And the color checker results, we're again seeing an improvement, a Delta E value of 2.73. So you can make some minor improvements through on-screen display adjustments, but not quite as good as you'll get from the PG258Q. Using the CalMan 5 utilities to calibrate this monitor using my i1 Display Pro, you can achieve very accurate results on the AG251FZ. We're seeing an average grayscale Delta E2000 value of 0.75, so that's essentially accurate, and an average color temperature of 6506K. Again, very, very accurate here. Probably the weakest aspect of this display, and something that can't really be calibrated out, is the gamma value. It still sits at 2.1 after calibration. I guess it's not too much of a big deal, but I would have ideally liked to see that at 2.2. Color accuracy is also improved. It's not dead accurate. We're seeing in our saturation sweeps an average Delta E value of 1.53. Again, an improvement over just calibrating using the OSD. And again, you can see here in our color checker test that the average Delta E2000 value has improved to a value of 1.87. So not as accurate as you'll find from an IPS level professional grade monitor, but with some calibration, you can still achieve really good results with the AG251FZ that I think will be suitable for most gamers and people after just sort of your decent levels of color accuracy and performance. So the AOC Agon AG251FZ is certainly a very decent gaming monitor for those of you who want something that's 24.5 inches and that can hit a 240Hz refresh rate. It is only 1080p, but you do get a very responsive gaming experience from that high refresh rate, and support for FreeSync will please those on AMD systems. The color performance out of the box is decent, though not outstanding, and it can be calibrated to a decent level after the fact. It's not as good as you'll find from an IPS level display, but still decent nonetheless. And the main feature here of the AG251FZ that I really appreciate is its design. It's much better than the competing Asus ROG PG258Q that I reviewed previously. I love its much more understated and professional design that looks a bit better on your desk, and you get an increased range of ports, including 2 HDMI ports and even VGA if you wanted to use it. The pricing, that's another important aspect to the AG251FZ that makes it a more compelling option than the PG258Q for those of you on a budget. Obviously, if you're on an NVIDIA system, you'll still need to spend a bit more to get that G-Sync module, but for those that don't care or are on an AMD system, you'll be saving at least $100 compared to the PG258Q, with this guy coming in at around $500 when it hits the US officially. And for those of you in Australia, this is a $600 Aussie monitor. Pretty expensive for a 1080p to 24.5 inch monitor, I know, but it is $300 cheaper than the PG258Q, making it one of the cheapest options available for the specifications that you get. And that's where I think the AOC Agon AG251FZ really succeeds. Anyway, that's it for this review of the monitor. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to check the written review on techspot.com, and we'll catch you in the next one.